Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, all in all, I thought that I would review this little video, and I thought that I would make this a part two video of basically calling the video New Media Admits That Saul Canelo Alvarez is the Best, part two. Because, like I said, when it comes down to with all the channels that I tend to review, and they usually are channels that I tend to disagree with, I may review a channel here and there that I do tend to agree with, but the reason why I mainly review channels overall that I tend to disagree with or opinions that I mainly would be flawed is because I just usually find that a little bit more entertaining. It basically makes it a little bit more of a debate-like video to basically where it goes back and forth. And that's why I may review a video to where I tend to agree with a person more than likely overall, disagree with the person than what I would overall agree. Because if the video is basically just me agreeing with the person the whole entire time, then of course there really wouldn't be much for me to break down. But anyways, when it comes down to it all in all, I thought that I would review this video. Mr. Boxing Ego, he's going to be talking about the possibility of there being a Jamal Charlo versus Caleb Plant fight next. And I don't necessarily have a problem with this fight next, but what I will say is this. I do remember a certain amount of new media or a certain amount of the people that, of course, like to stick up for Jamal Charlo or other fighters of that like. And listen, at the end of the day, like I said, I've had a certain amount of people come on my channel and they say, oh, well, you shouldn't call new media when it comes down to pro-black and all sort of stuff. It's a bad look. Listen, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to offend anyone. But if you're a person with some logical sense overall, and if you take a look at the media, just like how ESPN, maybe they may have double standards against black fighters, and I certainly think overall that that can be the case, or when it comes to other boxing outlets, just like they can have double standards against black fighters. Basically what the LDBC and new media are, basically what they are is their own version of ESPN. That's really what they are. So basically, instead of having double standards against black fighters, they have basically tried to tear down every other demographic, at least the majority of them. That's not me saying that every single channel out there I disagree with 100% of what they're saying. I think that, for example, Blue Blood Sports TV, who is with the LDBC, I certainly don't agree with everything that he has to say. But what I will say is that at least some of his breakdowns are somewhat based in logic and objectivity. But a lot of these channels are not based in that. A lot of them overall, of course, basically have that victim-like mentality, and they are mainly a pro-black cult. It just is what it is, and I do understand to a certain degree, the mindset that they have, or at least overall, with what they're saying, because a lot of the times they say, well, boxing, especially with ESPN and, basically other, media outlets, they always try to, put double standards against black fighters and rank these Caucasian and Latino fighters or other fighters of demographics above them when usually the black fighters are on top. I get it to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, you have to take a look at the idiosyncrasies. You have to overall realize context. And all in all, when it comes down to it, you have to realize the difference, like I said, between a great white hype or someone all in all that truly is being ranked above black fighters or certain fighters all in all just because they truly want that person to be the face of boxing. But then we take a look at it all in all and we say, okay, well, is this person or is this boxer, is this, is their resume basically a facade? Is it all smoke and mirrors? Or is this person for real? And if you're taking a look at boxers out there like a Tyson Fury, an Alexander Usyk, a Saul Canelo Alvarez, a Vasyl Lomachenko even, when it comes down to it, all those guys are real deal fighters no matter what level that you put them on. It's the same thing if I were taking a look at black fighters when it comes down to it. And I take a look at Gervonta Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson, even though those fighters in terms of A-grade competition are still a little bit unproven, I can tell by looking at those fighters are high-level fighters. Now, if we're talking about someone like an Adrian Broner, then maybe that's something a little bit different. But at the end of the day, if you're a person overall that knows shit about boxing, if you're a person all in all that knows something about the sport or overall has a logical and sound mind in some sort of sense, you know who is a real deal fighter when you watch them. And Saul Canelo Alvarez, whether these guys want to admit it or not, no matter whoever wants to admit it or not, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez is the current #1 pound-for-pound fighter. To be quite honest with you, I don't even have anyone close to his level. It just is what it is. Like I said, I made my top 10 pound-for-pound list, I believe it was yesterday, or I may release this video tomorrow, so maybe overall the day before, because I'm not sure if I'm going to release this today or tomorrow. But when it comes down to it, like I said, I have Canelo Alvarez, and I have a points rank system, meaning what? That the most amount of points that you can get on my pound-for-pound list, and I tried to rank it as logically and objectively as possible, the most amount of points you can get on my pound-for-pound list is 420. Canelo Alvarez had 417. The second fighter that I had at the second pound for pound spot was Alexander Usyk. He had about 400 to 399 points. What that means, in my opinion, is that there is no fighter in the world, in my opinion, that can debatably be over that of a Saul Canelo Alvarez. Not only is he extremely dominant and extremely skilled, but his resume and the accomplishments and the amount of champions that he has beaten, it is pretty much second to none compared to every other fighter that is fighting active today. It just is what it is. But anyways, we're going to see what Mr. Boxing Eagle has to say about the possibility of there being a Jamal Charlo versus Caleb Plant fight next. And like I said, these guys, for how much that they love to trash Canelo Alvarez, or how much overall they love to say that he maneuvers in certain ways, and basically Caleb Plant is this weak Caucasian fighter. And don't get me wrong, not every Caucasian fighter in boxing, not every Caucasian athlete is a person that, in my opinion, is a world beater. But you can tell overall what you're looking at if a person is a very decently talented fighter. And Caleb Plant was an A-grade fighter. If you don't want to rank him on the A+, or on the A level, you don't have to. But he at least was on that A- level. Because if he wasn't at least on the A- level, he would have not been able to dominate Jose Uzcategui the way that he was able to. And Jose Uzcategui was able to whoop one of the Durrell brothers' ass in very, very bad fashion. He was able to stop them. Caleb Plant was able to completely embarrass Jose Uzcategui, one of the champions, one of the former champions at 168 pounds. So don't go around telling me that Caleb Plant was not a real deal fighter. He was. But now that Caleb Plant, all in all, has been knocked out by Saul Canelo Alvarez, apparently Mr. Jamal Charlo, who of course is one of the fighters that new media loves to protect when it comes down to it, they're basically saying that they're very excited for this fight and that they think that this is a great fight, which is interesting because, of course, a lot of these same guys, they were claiming that Canelo Alvarez was maneuvering around certain people by taking this fight. Now, I will give credit to Eagle Ovo for at least saying this, because I do remember him saying that this was at least a very decent fight. But then at the same time, he would later on overall say, well, Canelo Alvarez is still maneuvering around certain opponents. And I'm not saying that he has not done some maneuvering here and there. But this is my personal opinion. In my view, Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, because of their styles, I believe that they were bigger threats towards Canelo than what a David Benavidez or what a Jamal Charlo personally was. Now, if you want to bring up a Demetrius Boo Andrade, that's something of a little bit of a different situation. Because, not only does he have decent power, I wouldn't say A-grade power, but he is decently slick, decent amateur background, can fight somewhat slick. But, like I said, I can't criticize Canelo too much because he is facing repeated, very decent competition. And Jamal Charlo, it's no offense if he takes this fight against Caleb Plant, but even if he does get this victory, don't get me wrong, it is a good victory, but it cannot be counted as a great victory. Because the knockout loss that Caleb Plant is coming off of, I mean, all in all, when it comes down to it, it was a pretty traumatic loss for Caleb Plant. It basically would be, basically kind of like when Terrence Crawford fought that of a Kell Brook. We don't really even know how good Caleb Plant is going to be anymore after that overall, after he got his ass whooped against Canelo Alvarez. And that's what you notice with a lot of these fighters, actually. When it comes down to it, it was the same thing with Floyd Mayweather Jr. A lot of these fighters, because Floyd would beat them usually so badly and in such dominant fashion. And this is what happens with a lot of the all-time great fighters. Once they beat that opponent, they're never mentally the same ever again. We've seen the same thing with Mayweather with some of the opponents that he would beat. It's the same thing with Canelo. Every fighter that he touches, when it comes down to it, they're never ever the same fighter ever again. Danny Jacobs, ever since that he has fought Canelo Alvarez, he's been on the downslide. He even almost lost the fight to that of Gabriel Rosado. Ever since he fought Austin Trout has lost every single fight of his career. Even Erislandy Lara after the Saul Canelo Alvarez fight. Erislandy Lara has somewhat underperformed in some of his bigger performances. When it comes to Caleb Plant, he more than likely is never going to be the same. Billy Joe Saunders had a broken orbital eye bone. Sergey Kovalev, now of course, he was never the same after he got knocked out by Andre Ward, but he was, still decent, at least when he fought Canelo. Now Sergey Kovalev, he's completely done. It just is what it is. So like I said, Canelo, he's just on that other level. He's on that upper echelon of fighters. It just is what it is. But anyways, Mr. Boxing Eagle is going to talk in this video. Let's tune in. And I'm also going to give my opinion about who potentially could win this Jamal Charlo versus Caleb Plant fight. Let's get into it.
Oh, yeah, it's getting very interesting. Jamal Charlo hints of a possible Caleb Plant fight, 2022. Sign me up. Stay tuned to this video. We're going to talk about all that. Yo, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you guys smash the like button. I need you guys 2022. Let's show up. Let's run the numbers up. Jamal Charlo, he's kind of hinting to a possible fight with Caleb Plant. I don't know. Let's pull it up. Boom. Jamal Charlo, you see there's him and his wifey, and let's check his stories. So right there, you see Jamal Charlo, and he looking in shape for starters. So I like to see that. I definitely like to see that. It says the biggest super middleweight in the world, right? So that's the first thing he put. The biggest super middleweight in the world.
And by the way, a certain amount of people, they may ask me when it comes down to it, because when it came to Canelo Alvarez beating Sergey Kovalev, a lot of people may ask me, well, when it comes down to, you give Canelo Alvarez a decent amount of credit for beating Sergey Kovalev, and he was never the same after he got knocked out by Andre Ward. So why are you saying this with Jamal Charlo? Because I don't really know where Caleb Plant is going to go from here. And I think that, to be honest with you, it would probably be best for Caleb Plant to take a tune-up fight when it comes down to it, but he's not going to do that. He's going to go straight into a Jamal Charlo fight, at least from what it sounds like. So I don't really have a barometer to really know overall how good Caleb Plant is. At least Sergey Kovalev, he ended up winning a title back within that very decently talented, light heavyweight division at the time, and he was coming off of two very decent wins. Anthony Yard, in my opinion, is not an A-grade fighter, but he is someone at least that's a decent athlete, and he was undefeated at the time. Sergey had a little bit of a tough time with him in a couple of rounds, but he was able to completely outperform him mainly in that fight and was able to knock him out. And on top of that, he was able to completely outperform Eleider Alvarez and get his confidence back in that rematch. And Eleider Alvarez was still one of the top contenders there. So Sergey Kovalev, at least when he fought Canelo Alvarez, I know that he was at least at somewhat of a decent point in his career, kind of like maybe when Oscar De La Hoya fought Floyd. He wasn't at, his complete peak when it came down to it, but he at least overall was at a decent point.
Now, it has since been deleted, but for a brief period of time, Jamal Charlo posted this, and it looks like a graphic of him and Caleb Plant. What does this mean? Does that mean this is something in the works? Now, Caleb Plant recently did an interview, and he said he would love to fight with Jamal Charlo. As you guys know, Caleb Plant is coming off of a good performance, but a loss to Canelo Alvarez.
Well, I don't know if I would describe it as a good performance, but he's coming off of a valiant effort, is what I'll say. Maybe you can argue at most that he pulled out 4 rounds against Canelo. I'm not even quite sure if I would argue that. I think that he probably more won 3. I thought he won the first couple rounds. He looked decently slick, but he just was not defensively responsible enough. Or what I'll say is this: he tried to be. Caleb Plant is not a bad defensive fighter in my opinion, but he was too repetitive.
And Canelo.
And he would stay in the corner way too damn long. You can't, if a fighter is pressuring you inconsistently, you can't stay up against the ropes the whole entire time. You have to find a way to get out of there. Kind of like Araceli Lara. That's why Lara gave Canelo Alvarez at the time so many problems, because Lara's feet, they just never stop moving. He always moves. And I know a certain amount of people, of course, they call that running, but listen, what Guillermo Rigondeaux did against that one Filipino fighter in his last fight, that's what I consider running. Someone that only throws 2 punches per round. You can't just move around when it comes down to it, all in all, and only throw 2 punches per round. What Lara did in the Canelo fight, in my opinion, maybe there were certain times where maybe you could have argued that he could have threw more. But like I said, I don't like that running shit when it comes down to it. And what I mean by that is that I don't like it when people call it running. To me, that's just defensive boxing. And that's fine overall to box like that. But you're going to have to, you have to throw consistently. I thought Lara threw somewhat consistently against Canelo Alvarez, but Guillermo Rigondeaux, for example, in that last fight that he had against that one Filipino fighter, I don't remember the dude's name. You can't completely be on the back foot the whole entire time and throw 2 to 3 punches per round. All in all, and some people are going to say, oh, well, he threw more than that. He maybe threw a little bit more than that, but Guillermo Rigondeaux, he was on his bicycle the whole entire time and barely throwing shit. I mean, you can't do that. Don't get me wrong. The other guy, he wasn't throwing a whole lot either. But, judges, they'll give the advantage to the guys pressuring overall, especially if the other guy is not throwing a whole lot. Now, maybe if you're a Mayweather, or if you're someone overall like, someone else on the back foot, like a Shakur Stevenson or a Crawford that throws consistently, then, of course, they have no choice but to give it to you if you're very, very dominant. But Guillermo Rigondeaux didn't do that in his last fight.
Alvarez is now undisputed.
And for those of you overall that don't know my background on Guillermo Rigondeaux, I've always rooted for Guillermo Rigondeaux. I root for a lot of the Cuban fighters. But Gilmore Rigondeaux, it wasn't his best performance.
Very interesting stuff, especially with Charlo he posted this and it says, I'm the biggest middleweight in the world, right? So let me see if I can pull that up again for you guys. Right there, it says biggest middleweight, super middleweight in the world, excuse me. So he looks in.
And this is very interesting because, once again, Ego and Dante's Boxing Nation, they've always been one of these guys to allege that Canelo Alvarez, that he maneuvers around certain opponents, that he's ducking Demetrius Andre, that he's ducking Jamal Charlo. Why is Jamal Charlo not getting the same response? If you guys are allegedly, facts over feelings. That's what they always love to say. That's basically what they always say. If you're facts over feelings, why is Jamal Charlo not getting the same criticism that Canelo Alvarez is getting from you? Because Jamal Charlo, he's ducking the same people, or he's not interested in fighting the same people that Canelo Alvarez is allegedly not interested in facing. Jamal Charlo is not taking the Demetrius Andrade fight. Jamal Charlo is not taking the David Benavidez fight. He's not taking those fights. So why is Jamal Charlo not, crucified the same way that Canelo Alvarez is? Like I said, within this pro-black cult circle, like I said, we already know the answer to that. But it is what it is. Anyway.
Shape, but he looks big, like maybe he's possibly bulking up. And maybe Caleb Plant fight is on the table. Let's see if Caleb Plant.
And like I said, you notice whenever Dante's Boxing Nation, you can look at it in my video, I believe that I released a couple days ago, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago. Like I said, I can't remember. I've actually been posting more, lately than what I usually am used to. But when it comes down to it all in all, and I'll try to post more consistently as well, because I do like, making videos for y'all. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you notice whenever people talk about Jamal Charlo, especially the people that adore him, like a Dante's Boxing Nation or people in new media, they always say the same thing. Well, Jamal Charlo, he is going up to a new weight class. But like I said, Canelo Alvarez, he's the only, this is why he's on another level. Because Canelo is the only one that can move anywhere from cruiserweight to 160. And basically, he's going to be favored in any one of those fights. That's why Canelo Alvarez is on another level. No one overall, especially these Canelo guys, no one would be saying all in all that, oh, well, Canelo, he's moving up the cruiserweight or he's moving up to 175. So, all in all, we have to give Canelo a lot of credit here. Every fight that he's in, he's expected to win.
What do you think? So, he put some tape. No, nothing. He didn't put anything about Charlo. But I know, because I made a video about this. Caleb Plant said he would love to fight Jamal Charlo, and that's a fight he would take with open arms. So maybe that interview got back to somebody from PBC, or maybe that was always in the works. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is. But if Charlo is moving up, I like it. I think he has the frame to do it. I think him and Caleb Plant is amazing.
He definitely has the frame to do it. Jamal Charlo is like, what, 5'11", 6 foot when it comes down to it, maybe has A-grade power. He has basically the same stature as a Canelo Alvarez. Maybe in terms of weight, he's a bit smaller, but he pretty much has the same stature. The only thing that separates him and Canelo Alvarez is just his skill set. Jamal Charlo does not have the head movement. He doesn't have the hand speed. I don't even know if he has the power of a Canelo Alvarez. It just is what it is. I don't think that he has anything over Canelo Alvarez, to be quite honest with you.
Amazing fight, and it makes a lot of sense. Even though Caleb Plant is coming off a loss, Canelo's a great fighter. Really no shame losing in a great competitive fight. I personally thought that Caleb Plant pushed Canelo a lot further than we've seen since at least Danny Jacobs, Triple G. I thought he...
Well, I thought Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant both gave it valiant efforts. I think that maybe they both pulled out about 3 rounds. Some may even debate 4, but I can't really debate that. One of my commentators overall, I remember on the Billy Joe Saunders Caleb Plant fight, and I respect them because I think that he's usually very decently logical and objective. Mr. Thomas, I believe, all in all, when it comes down to it, usually a person that checks out the Errol Spence videos overall because I believe that he is an Errol Spence fan. But when it comes down to it, he said all in all that he actually had Billy Joe Saunders winning that fight. I get it for a certain amount of people, but at the end of the day, I cannot have Billy Joe Saunders winning that fight. And the reason why that is because Billy Joe Saunders, even though I think that, he looked very slick in the fight, he was moving around Canelo, he was trying to box very nicely, but you got to land flush. and a lot of the punches that, like actually what it kind of reminded me of like a better version of Adrian Broner versus Mikey Garcia. It reminded me basically of the first round, like Adrian Broner, when, if you stand still, he can outbox you. But as soon as you start putting the pressure on him and a very good, consistent offense, and an offense all in all that is thought out and intelligent, he couldn't handle it. And I think Billy Joe Saunders is a better fighter than what Adrian Broner probably ever was. And I know a certain amount of people are going to be like, I don't know about that. Yes, he is, because Billy Joe Saunders, at the end of the day, I could tell all in all that he's at least a very decent boxer. Adrian Broner is never going to win any of his 50-50 matchups. He's never going to beat any of them. It is what it is. Billy Joe Saunders, I think at least, before this Canelo Alvarez fight, he could have potentially beat them. And let's also give Billy Joe Saunders credit here. He did defeat some champions. He defeated Dave Lemieux. He defeated Andy Lee. He also defeated Chris Eubank Jr. So it is what it is. I don't remember if Chris Eubank Jr. has really ever been specifically a champion, but, he is a tough customer.
Did better, way better than Caleb Smith, way better than Billy Joe Saunders. And it's a learning.
No, he didn't really do way better than Billy Joe Saunders. He did around the same as Billy Joe Saunders. That's what he did.
Lesson, Canelo took a loss.
I mean, people be trying to act like, that Caleb Plant pulled out like 5 rounds or something. Of course, Aki, you can even go as far as Aki TV said, and he said, Caleb Plant was completely outboxing Canelo Alvarez. You can go that far. But, those boys, they all say the same shit. They always love to, pull this narrative out of their ass. I'll at least give Ego this much credit. He's certainly not as delusional as those two when it comes down to it. But, of course, that ain't saying much. But, like I said, when it comes down to it, this narrative that Canelo just gets completely outboxed by every opponent that he faces. Like, what fights are you watching, man?
To Floyd Mayweather and learned and got better. So who's to say guys like Caleb Plant can't do that? As far as Jamal Charlo, again, he definitely has the size to move up. You see, he's a big dude, and he's powerful. And I don't know. There are a lot of people that were super critical of Jamal Charlo versus Montiel. My thing is this. I thought it was just Montiel was tough. Like, I seen a lot of comments.
Yeah, Montiel is tough, but come on, you're talking about a dude that's a C-grade fighter. If you're Jamal Charlo, you're supposed to overall make, mincemeat out of that guy. It just is what it is. I mean, it's not even like an Araceli Lara performance where sometimes Lara, you can tell, is kind of holding back because he just fights a little bit too defensive. Jamal Charlo just looked like shit. It just is what it is. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to hate on anyone here, but it just is what it is. I mean, you go ahead and take a look at that performance and tell me it looked good. It'd be different if it was against a decently competitive fight. Even if it were a B-grade fighter, I wouldn't necessarily, go after him that much. I mean, he wasn't even too impressive against Austin China Matt Korobov, in my opinion, but at least those fighters, they have a little bit of slickness. Montiel, he has nothing. He just has nothing. Very poor feet, very poor head movement. I mean, come on. Jamal should have put on a hell of a lot of a better performance.
Did the Boxing Eagle watch party for that particular fight? I seen a lot of people had a lot of things to say. To me, that was just a testament to Montiel being tough. I don't think Charlo looked as bad as some people are making it out to be.
Well, I don't think he looked as bad overall as what he did in, say, the Matt Korobov fight or the Austin Trout fights. He clearly, won, more rounds in this fight or the Montiel fight than what he did in those fights. But you should have. You were facing a C-grade fighter. You're talking about a dude with already 4 losses, and the biggest win of his career is beating a James Kirkland who had, a 2-year layoff? Or I really actually can't remember, but I know James Kirkland, he was not too active for the past few years. And on top of that, James Kirkland, he's completely done at this point in time in his career anyway.
But, again, this is just my personal opinion. I thought Charlo, the only mistake or thing he could have tweaked is he was before his hometown crowd. So I think when he had Montiel badly hurt and knowing Montiel had been stopped by Jaime Munguia, he thought he could stop him. So he put a lot of effort and energy into trying to get the stop.
I wouldn't mind to see Jamal Charlo versus Jaime Munguia, but I do believe that Jamal Charlo more than likely would probably put it on Jaime Munguia. Like I said, I'm not overly impressed with Jaime Munguia. There's certain people that are pushing for the Jaime Munguia versus Andre and Jaime Munguia versus Charlo fight. And I do think that is a good fight because that probably would be the biggest name on the resume, to be quite honest with you. At least the biggest name on Andre's resume. But when it comes down to it, Jaime Munguia, he never has really impressed me that much. I think that he's got the size. I think that, he certainly has power. But when I take a look at his skill set, it's not A grade. Very wild puncher, hittable, can get countered. I mean, if he fought Jamal Charlo and if Jamal at least was on his A game, Jamal could even potentially stop him, but I don't know.
stoppage. And sometimes when you do that, sometimes when you put that much effort and energy into stopping somebody, you don't pace yourself, etc. And that's kind of the predicament he was in. I think Charlo gassed
You can make that point. I don't necessarily think that that is the worst point.
out towards the end, and that was the biggest thing. It didn't look like he was about to get stopped or anything like that. So I didn't think it was so crazy of a performance. I think the only mistake that he made was he tried to unload the clip on the man, and the guy was just extremely tough. See, look at this picture. He doing a Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy, you Superman, that you. He was hitting him with everything, and some guys are tough. Same thing with Gervonta Davis. It reminds me of that fight. Gervonta Davis fought Isaac Pitbull Cruz, ended up hurting his hand, just like
Yeah, but the Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Javante Tank Davis fight, that's a little bit different. Because not only is Isaac Cruz, not only is he a few levels above this dude, Montiel, and Pitbull Cruz, in my opinion, he's not necessarily what I would call an A-grade fighter, but he is decently tough. Tougher than I even thought. But when it comes down to it all in all, I do believe that Javante Tank Davis hurt his hand. So, underestimating him a little bit, probably not thinking that he was A-grade going into the fight and hurting his hand, that's understandable. But the performance that he had against Montiel, I mean, come on.
Jamal Charlo hurt his hand on this dude. And the ironic thing is,
I didn't hear anything about that. I didn't hear anything about Jamal Charlo having a hurt hand, but maybe I'm wrong.
they're both.
And ain't that a bitch how apparently Jamal Charlo and, these guys, they hurt their hand, but, Vasily Lomachenko or Teofimo, they pop out with excuses, and they ain't believing that. Or Ryan Garcia or all their bullshit. Anyway.
African American black fighters versus guys who hail from Mexico. So sometimes you just get that type of opponent, relentless, not going to win the fight, but they show an immense heart, and that's what you got to deal with for 12 rounds. And that's what happened with Charlo, and it's what happened with Tank Davis versus Pitbull Cruz.
I get your point, but at the end of the day, Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz, that was a fight all in all that, like I said, at the end of the day, that's a that's a much bigger fight all in all than Montiel versus Jamal Charlo. I mean, really, to be quite honest with you, this was it was pretty much a lamb coming in for the slaughter.
So maybe Charlo felt something else in the fight. I don't know. Maybe he felt drained, and maybe he thinks he got tired because of the weight cut, and he's considering moving up. Or it could just be Jamal Charlo. Maybe he thinks that the best opportunities are above 160 for him now. I don't know. So we'll see if this turns out to be anything. A fight I did want to see at 160 was Jamal Charlo and Chris Eubank, and it looked like we were close to getting that. Eubank Jr. was signed with PBC, and then he left.
So why do these people overall want to see Chris Eubank Jr., a fighter that's already lost a few times in his career, a person that got beat by Billy Joe Saunders, a dude that Canelo just broke someone's eye socket? You want to see Jamal Charlo versus Chris Eubank Jr., but Canelo is moving in a certain type of way because he's facing undefeated champions. I got you.
And after he was talking crap about Charlo, so that was kind of a missed opportunity. And Chris Eubank ain't really fought no big names since he made that move, so I don't really understand why he talked crap about Charlo and then end up leaving the division. But that was a fight I wanted to see. So Triple G's not giving him the opportunity. Canelo said he's not going back down to 160. 154 is like owned by his brother. And Castano, they're about to do a rematch. So even if Charlo Jermell wins, it's not like he's going to move up and fight his brother. So maybe he feels his time is limited at 168. Either way, fingers crossed that the Caleb Plant fight does happen. I think that's a great fight. David Benavidez is all.
Why do you think that that's a great fight? When Canelo Alvarez was allegedly, and I've heard you say this multiple times, just like Dante's Boxing Nation and Aki TV, that Canelo maneuvers in a certain way. These guys always allege the same bullshit when it comes down to it. Canelo moves in a certain way, but as soon as they'll face one of Canelo Alvarez's leftovers, all of a sudden, like I said, this is the same treatment that Floyd Mayweather Jr. was getting. That's how you know that you're on a different level.
So said he wants to fight Charlo, but that's not the type of fight based on how big Benavidez is, and he's had some trouble missing weights and making weights and things like that. I would like to see Canelo and Benavidez first because Canelo is already acclimated. I don't think I'm a fair.
Why would you want to see Canelo versus Benavidez first? So basically, that's your way of admitting flat out that Canelo's on a different level. because Canelo overall basically has way more experience against elite A level fighters. It just is what it is. You know, if you think that Jamal Charlo's the real deal, if you think all in all that he truly does deserve that Canelo Alvarez fight, and I'm a believer all in all that he does deserve the Canelo fight to a degree. I do believe that he does because he is one of the best fighters out there that Canelo could possibly face. But at the end of the day, why would you say something if you truly believe that Canelo is avoiding a Charlo? Oh, but I want to see Canelo versus Benavidez first before Charlo faces Benavidez. Why? Charlo can apparently handle himself, isn't that right? Like I said, these guys know. They know what's up.
Fair critic, you know what I'm saying? I'm a fair sportsman and a sports fan. I don't think a guy like Charlo needs to move up to 68 and has to fight Benavidez. No one else has fought. Canelo hasn't fought Benavidez.
Why not? Why should he not have to face Benavidez? Charlo apparently is a person that is one of the elite contenders out there. So why not? Apparently Canelo has been ducking Charlo for years upon years upon years. You know, this is a bullshit that I've been hearing for many years. You know, like I said, do I think that maybe there's some substance to the Demetrius Andrade one? Maybe, because like I said, that is the only fighter that Canelo has never really mentioned. But this is Jamal Charlo shit, in my opinion. I think that it has been heavily played out. Like I said, I've never seen Jamal Charlo on the same level as Canelo. I didn't see him there several years ago. I don't see him several years later today. It just is what it is. You know, it's whatever.
And he got experience at the higher weight. So why is Charlo have to move up in his very first fight be Benavidez? But if
Hey, you want that Canelo Alvarez fight, right? Apparently, Canelo Alvarez, like I said, he's scared to face Jamal Charlo. Well, there'd be no other way to show that you're one of the big boys to get in line over to face Canelo Alvarez next, like whooping David Benavidez' ass, as Jamal Charlo alleges.
he is moving up, I'm not mad at that. And I think Caleb Plant is a great introductory fight. It's not a gimme fight.
As you say, you know, as I said, look at these guys saying the same shit. They all say that it's a great introductory fight, but Canelo does not get introductory fights. You see what I'm saying? When it's Lunga Makabu, what does ego say? It's a cherry pick. He's maneuvering in a certain way. You know, if he faces Sergey Kovalev, it's a cherry pick. He's picking the weakest champion. You know, so like I said, that's how you know. They're basically admitting to you. They're basically telling you flat out, I know Canelo Alvarez is on a different level. I know overall that he is above all those fighters.
Caleb can scrap. Caleb has good size. You know, they're probably around each other's height. That's a hell of a move up fight. So we'll see what PBC has in store. But I'm liking the sounds of that fight. Charlo took it off his story, so I don't.
I think personally that it's a decent fight. I don't think that it's a great fight because Caleb Plant, like I said, I don't know where he is coming off of a knockout loss and a very traumatic knockout loss, to be quite honest with you. But Caleb Plant could give Jamal Charlo some problems. Jamal Charlo has always had problems with slick boxers. And Caleb Plant is a very decently slick boxer, but the only problem is that I don't know how confident he's going to be heading into that fight. And if he gets hit with a good shot, I'm not sure how well he's going to take it. Because certain fighters, like I said, when they get hit with certain, you know, or when they get knocked out, their punch resistance, their confidence, their mojo, sometimes it's never the same again. They can't take shots overall like they used to before. You know, they don't have the same confidence in taking a shot overall as they used to before. So, like I said, we'll see what happens.
Know what that represents. I don't know if he was hinting to it or he was just putting that in the universe because that's what he wants. But we'll see. I'll leave it to Charlo. They're definitely outspoken characters, so I'm sure Charlo will let it be known what he wants to do or what his next move is.
Yeah, they're outspoken. You mean over emotional. It just is what it is. And the Charlo brothers, man, you know, I've actually been rooting for them for quite a while because, like I said, there was a point to where a lot of people actually did not like them because a lot of people did not think, kind of like Danny Garcia, like a lot of people did not think that he was a real deal fighter. Now everyone respects him because now he has a couple losses, but, you know, it is what it is. You know, now people respect Charlo's, you know, the Charlo brothers because they see all in all that, you know, basically at least Jamal, that he was a real deal because he was able to get past, you know, Julian J. Williams and Jamel Charlo. He's almost able to completely unify that division. So now everyone is basically all up on him.
And I can't wait to see. But possibly Jamal Charlo, Caleb Plant, an amazing fight at 168. It looks like he's hinting at a move to 168, and I know he, like shape wise, I think he can easily make the transition. And he's talked about it. I have an interview when he was in New York. Him and his brother did interviews with me in the media, and he talked about at some point going up to 68. So maybe that time is now. I don't know. We'll wait for the Charlos to make their official announcement. But one thing I will give credit to Premier Boxing Champions is they keep things under wraps and really don't say a bunch of stuff, and they're working behind the scenes. And then before you know it, they'll probably do a Showtime or Fox up front or PBC up front and just announce Charlo Castano and this and that in conjunction with Keith Thurman's fighting Barrios that's known about. And I think they're going to start releasing some of their other schedule. And I can't wait for that. Hopefully Charlo's on it in a good fight. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know how I did in this video. Do you want to see a Jamal Charlo versus Caleb Plant? Amazing fight, potentially for 168. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Subscribe. I am the best. And I'm out.
Anyways, that's really about it for this video. But personally, if you're asking me what fight I would like to see Jamal Charlo in next, I don't think the Caleb Plant fight is a bad fight. I just don't think that it's a great fight either. But we'll see all know what happens. Personally, the fight that I would like to see him in next would be that of a David Benavidez. Because Jamal Charlo does have the stature to where he could easily fit at 168. And David Benavidez, he's probably more of a natural light heavyweight, to be quite honest with you. But David Benavidez is a person to where, just because of his style, it's a 50-50 matchup with Jamal. David Benavidez is a great pressure fighter. He does have decent athleticism, but he doesn't have a great power. So I think Jamal would somewhat be able to take it when it comes down to it. And basically, whoever were to win that fight, they probably overall would have a golden ticket towards Canelo Alvarez, at least within the next couple of years. But we'll see all know what happens. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for the video today. I'll talk to you all later.